Hi, my name is Javier Albornoz, and today we'll be talking about recording audio in Pro Tools. We'll go over file setup, inputs and outputs of your audio tracks, how to record enable tracks, and how we can record multiple tracks at once. Because I'll be recording the same microphone into Pro Tools that I'm using with my screen capture app, keep in mind that you will hear the microphone signal doubled whenever I record enable an audio track. This is because record enabling a track passes through whatever audio signal is being input into your audio interface and then into that track. Let's start by creating a new Pro Tools session in our dashboard. We click Create, we name our session, we choose .wave for file type. Let's use our sample rate at 48 kilohertz, 24 bits for bit depth, as this is the standard for audio for any type of visual media. And let's keep our I/O settings to our last used. You can either be prompted for location or already choose your location, and then we simply click Create. We've got a blank session with our edit window on top and our our mix window in the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is add a new track. So let's go ahead and actually add 2 audio tracks. While we're here, we will choose mono since our source will be a mono microphone input. We'll choose audio tracks and we'll leave the time base as samples and we'll leave them, the name we'll leave as audio and it'll increment audio 1 and 2. Click create. Now we've got our audio 1 and 2 tracks, which I'll make slightly bigger. Now the next thing we want to do is make sure that we create a master track or master fader. So let's in this case choose a stereo master since we are monitoring in stereo. Choose master fader, leave the time base as samples, and we can leave the name as masters or whatever else you would like to name your master channel. So the first thing we need to do is check on our routing to make sure that we're getting our input from whatever source we'll be recording, which in this case is the microphone that I'm actually speaking into right now. So you'll see that both of our audio channels are routed to our stereo output, which in this case A.1 and 2, you can see the speaker icon there, and our input on both. This one automatically was set to analog 1 and analog 2, which is simply the first and second inputs on the audio interface that I'm using, which has 28 inputs, some of them being analog, some are mic, SPDIF, and digital ADAT inputs. So we have to know what input our microphone is actually going into. Now the way you do that is by clicking on Setup, go to I/O, and in my case, in my audio interface, I know that A.1 is the mono input where the microphone is being input through. So you can see here when I expand it, we do have this channel. It is one of our 28 channels here. It happens to be number 13 on this audio interface and it is enabled. So we should be getting signal as long as we route our audio track there. Now, of course, the output we are monitoring. You can see the speaker icon here, A.1 and 2, which is our output 13 and 14. And you can see here the monitor path is set to A.1 and 2. Now, of course, this will be different on every audio interface and depending on what system you're using. But if your Pro Tools system has already been set up, that's why it's usually a good idea to just click on last use for I/O setup when you are creating your new Pro Tools session. So let's go ahead and go back to our edit window. And now that I have shown you the I/O setup, I know that I need to choose A.1 mono for both of these audio tracks because we will be recording the same microphone source into both. So now that I've worked out the routing, I think I'm about ready to record. So the first thing you would need to do is record enable your audio track. So you can see here that now that I've record enabled, we are getting level into Pro Tools, and I actually am hearing the microphone coming through. So I'm going to uncheck that for now and just pull up my transport, which you can see here under window. You can choose transport, and essentially it's the same as what you're seeing up here, just with a bit more information and some other options. So I'll place that here so I can see it as I record. And again, I'll record enable. I'll click record so that the recording is armed. And then I will click play and it'll begin recording. So now you can see that as I speak, we are getting signal and it is being recorded into Pro Tools. Great. So now I will click stop either on my transport bar here or up here. It's the same thing. Let's zoom in a little bit and you can see, let me unrecord enable. You can see here that we have our audio. Now unrecord enable so that you can hear playback, and let's do that. So now you can see that as I speak, we are getting signal and it is great. So we successfully recorded there. Now, what if I had multiple sources that I wanted to record and record to multiple tracks at once? So this is why we created two channels. So in this case, I only have this one mic source, but just for example's sake, let's pretend that audio 2 had a different mic source. So I would choose whatever input on my interface that was coming through, but we'll leave it at 1 since I only have this one source. And we can actually then record enable both tracks. Now I'm going to move later in my timeline, arm the recording, press play, and now you can see that we're actually getting signal into both audio tracks. Let's stop that, unrecord enable, and when we play back, press play, and now you can see that we're actually getting the same exact signal. So you're not going to notice that we recorded on both, but if I do just slightly shift, you'll hear that it's two separate signals. Press play, and now you can see that we're great. So this is a great way to record. Let's say if you had a drum kit you were recording and you had multiple microphones, or maybe an acoustic guitar with a stereo setup. Now in that case, of course, you would want to work with both audio tracks together, and this would be a great time to actually create a group and set up probably an edit group or maybe a mix and edit group, so that when you're altering and editing both of these files, they will move together and you won't have any issues with the sync of the recording. So let's go ahead and try another way of recording. We'll move further along in our timeline. We can actually, rather than just hitting play and letting the recording just continue along the timeline, we can actually choose a section of our timeline. For example, let's say we wanted to record these 10 seconds. Maybe we were doing an overdub recording or just trying to punch in at that one section. That loop that we created, or rather selection in our timeline, will be the exact amount where Pro Tools will record, and it will stop recording at the end of our section. So let's shrink it a little bit just for example's sake. We will record enable, arm the recording, play, and there we go. We're recording and it'll stop when it gets to the end. Now if we play that back, play, and there we go. We're recording and it'll great. So you can see how that would be a great way to maybe just record a very specific section to video that you're trying to record Also here on our transport bar, there's this button that you see here called Count Off. And right now it's set for 2 bars, and it is referring to a musical time base. So right now we're not really working on a musical time base, we're just recording audio. But this is a great way to actually just give yourself some time before the recording starts. If, for example, you were trying to record by yourself and you had to quickly press record and run over to your microphone in the next door booth, or a situation like that, it can prove very helpful. So let's click count off and let's see what happens. So at 120 beats per minute, 2 bars, it's going to just take a few seconds and then the recording will start. We'll record enable our track, arm the recording, press play. So you can see it flashing here. And now we're recording. So you can see how that gives you a little bit of time to get to your microphone or just let the musician prepare. If you were recording to a musical time base and you had your click track and were recording that way, you would actually hear the click for 2 bars of 4/4 time or whatever meter you had selected before the recording started. Let's give that a shot. If we were to add track, create click track, now you can see our click track shows up both in our edit and in our mix window. I'm going to just move the track down below our second audio track, and let's go ahead and leave count off selected for 2 bars. So now let's record enable, arm, and play. And now we're recording after 2 bars of 4/4 as a count off. I can then mute our click so we're no longer hearing that. But remember that the click does not record into your audio. That is simply just being sent as something that you, as the engineer or the musician recording, would hear in their headphones, but it does not translate into the recording. Let's play it back. And now we're recording after 2 bars of 4/4 as a count off. I can then mute our click, so we're great. So you can see how the click is independent. When it first started playing back, it was unmuted, and then I muted it, and you can also play it back. And now we're recording on mute. 2 bars, there you have your click as a count off. So you can have the click playing back during recording, during only playback. And the great thing is too here, if we expand, you can actually automate the click. So for example, if maybe you only wanted to hear the click for a section of it just to check on the timing of what you recorded, or set it up so that the musician only hears click during part of it, this automation here will translate. Let's play this back with our click unmuted. And now we're recording. And you see the click 2 bars of 4/4. You see that the automation is reflected in the fader here. I can then mute our click. Great. So you can do a lot of things there with your click that can be very helpful when you're recording musicians as opposed to dialogue as we're doing right now. So that's a quick intro into recording audio. From here, you've got all your different files in your clip list. You can see how as I go and click on each in the clip list, it is selecting each, and everything you record will show up here. It will end up in your audio files folder that was created in the folder wherever you chose to save your Pro Tools session file. And from here, you're ready to start editing.